Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Elizabeth Liz Muschett, and joining me today is astrologer and colleague and friend Justin Crockett Elzie. Hi, Justin. How you doing?
Great, Liz. How are you doing today?
Good. I had a wonderful beach walk this morning, 5 miles. It was awesome, and seeing the birds flying around and the fresh water and hardly anybody on the beach. It was beautiful.
That's a great way to have a lead in to the summer Cancerian season here.
Absolutely. And Cancer rules the crab, so, in the ocean or the sound. So today we're talking about Jupiter ingress into Cancer, and Justin's an archetypal and Jyotish astrologer, teacher, author, and Buddhist. His email is justin.elzie@gmail.com. I'm an astrologer, author, intuitive, and numerologist, certified relationship astrologer, Dwarf Planet University graduate, and my website is alightpath.com. And we enjoy hearing from you. And we're talking about Jupiter, the gaseous planet. So, some facts about Jupiter: it's the largest planet in the solar system. It's known as the king of planets. It's a gas giant, has 95 named moons, and they keep finding more, has faint rings around it, has a strong magnetic field, and the orbit of Jupiter around the sun is 11.86 years. So we always round it off to say about 12 years. And
I,
Justin's going to,
I can I say something about that, just as an interesting note for people that may not know this. But every time that a person has a Jupiter return, when Jupiter comes back around to whatever sign your Jupiter's in, you're also experiencing your Chinese horoscope animal at the same time, because the Chinese base their horoscope, the ox, the pig, the horse, the rat, all of that's based on the Jupiterian 12-year cycle around the sun. So every time we have a Jupiter return, which is a growth period, we're also having our our Chinese animal, and this year is the year of the snake. So it's that dynamic between the Gemini and Cancer there.
yes, absolutely. And Justin, will you tell us about Cancer, please?
Yeah, so Cancer is a cardinal modality. So that means it likes to initiate and create, and it's all about nurturing. Ruling planet is the moon, and it's a water element, so it's reflective and emotional, intuitive. And the mantra for Cancer is "I feel," and the keywords are sensitive, caring, warm, family oriented or family value type of orientation, sentimental, feeling, and intuitive. Cautions with Cancer: there's always a kind of I would say something that everything has a spectrum, so you have to be careful of being oversensitive or taking things too personally, lack of boundaries, controlling or passive aggressive, or emotionally rationalizing things. Um, so that's some of the things about Cancer.
And then a few Jupiter and Cancer themes: family, the food industry, safety at school and children, compassion, women and reproductive health, environment, especially water, floods, hurricanes, and typhoons. Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I would say, it's interesting that if I can just kind of say a couple things here about the different planets in Cancer. So, in my experience, and I'd be curious about yours. So, like, let's say a person has Mercury in Cancer, Mercury planet communications, they'll tend to be an emotional communicator in general, or emotions are very much a part of their thinking. If a person has Venus in Cancer, their affections come with emotion, and emotion and love is very important in affections, or they need that. If Mars is in Cancer, then before taking action, they take action bait, because Mars is about forward effort, vigor, action. They'll do it based on an intuition or a feeling. So that's where we talk about emotional rationalization. And of course with Uranus in Cancer, they they're the type of people who, along that concept which you brought up there about family, I've noticed, and it is a generational thing. I forget what year, I think it's in the 50s, but they will tend to go outside the bounds of traditional family. So when a person has Uranus in Cancer, they tend to include other people, non-familial family members, as Cancer too. So like the gal that they go to coffee with once a week becomes like a sister to them. So that's Uranus in Cancer, and they kind of become this mother for other people who are not even their children. And then, of course, Neptune in Cancer would be where the collective, it's all about clan and, like you've brought about family. And Pluto in Cancer, which my father had because he was born in 1930, that generation, they're learning about non-attachment with family, and they'll go through a lot of family dynamics and changes in family. Um, the Jupiter in Cancer, in my experience, has been, because Jupiter is about how we grow and expand. And I've found that when people have Jupiter in Cancer, they tend to grow through family. So whether it's work or what extracurricular activities, doesn't have to be just your family, but everything has to feel like they need to be a part of something that's like a family. So work has to feel like a family, or they'll associate themselves with some type of institution and they need to feel that sense of family or belonging. But they also understand emotional supportiveness, and there's a very and they will tend to, if people have a lot of planets in Cancer, um, they could end up being caregivers. That's one of the themes that does come out there is caregiving. Any thoughts on what I was just kind of covering?
Well, yeah, I would agree with that. In Jupiter going into Cancer, it's like if you're avoiding your feelings, you could like eat extra and possibly gain weight. Like, so be aware and try to be in touch with your feelings as much as possible.
Well, we were just talking before we got on the show today about what's your comfort food, right? And that's like that, right?
Right, right. So it's like don't eat your feelings, face them and address them. So,
Right,
but yes,
right,
sometimes we need a comfort food, but just as long as it doesn't get out of hand.
right,
Or just you're only eating that and a whole lot of it instead
right.
of your dinner,
Exactly.
per se. Okay, so Jupiter enters Cancer on June 9th, and Jupiter stations retrograde on November 11th at 25 degrees of Cancer. Then it will station direct on March 10th of 2026 at 15 degrees Cancer. And then Jupiter will leave Cancer and enter Leo on June 29th of 2026. So just a smidge over a year that Jupiter will be in Cancer. And a previous Jupiter in Cancer was June 25th, 2013 through July 15th of 2014. So if you journal or you can think back what you were doing at that time, what seeds did you plant? How have they germinated and grown? And what seeds are you going to plant now? Just something kinda to reflect on. Would you like to add anything?
Well, I might say that's when I lived in New York. If you want to know me personally, I lived in New York, and I started transitioning from the corporate world into this work. So I was doing training, but yeah. So, and
Oh,
from a mundane astrology perspective, I was going to mention about Cancer is that um, because it does rule families and children, uh, we're going to see a lot more about families and children rise to the surface as a theme during the next year and a half. I might note during the first Trump administration, there was a really important planetary transit. I believe it was Mars that went through Cancer, or there was some planet that went through Cancer at the time. And it was just clearly all about the children. And when we were seeing children separated from their parents, and Cancer was very prominent then. So now we're back to where Cancer is going to be sort of a very prominent with Jupiter in it. So we'll start to see that children become kind of rise to the top of the surface as themes wise here, and we may see a more focus on that, children in our society.
So I have a few keywords more here for Cancer. We've talked about some of them: nurturing, mother, love, clan, emotional, introverted, family value, clinging to the past, home, belongings, traditional, and conservative. Would you like to add anything?
Well, I also say, instead of clinging to the past, we can say sentimental.
Yes.
Sentimental. There's a sentimentality there, and so um, cancers a lot of times like antiques and things that are older and have sentimental value because it's about memory and the past.
Right. It's like you could go by a bakery and smell chocolate chip cookies, and your grandmother made you chocolate chip cookies when you were young, and it's like, oh, it just triggers that memory.
And now they become a comfort food.
Yes. So Jupiter inflates what it touches, is exalted in Cancer, so it really likes being in Cancer, and it's the image of the benevolent king. Anything you'd like to add about Jupiter?
No, I think that's got it covered.
So this is the chart for Seattle on June 9th at 2:02 p.m. And Jupiter is at the top of the chart at the midheaven, and Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. Anything you'd like to add?
No, no, go ahead.
Okay. So the aspects with Jupiter are it's conjunct Mercury. Now for this location, it's also conjunct the midheaven, but in your location, it might not be conjunct the midheaven because it changes. Then Jupiter has a trine to Vesta in Scorpio, and I'm going to have to make this bigger so I can see it. And it also has a trine to Pallas Athena in Aquarius. That's out of sign trine. Then it's square to Saturn and Neptune in Aries. It's sesquiquadrate to Juno in Scorpio. And we have a yod pointing to that Jupiter, with the moon being one handle in Sagittarius and Pluto being the other in Aquarius. So, what would you like to talk about?
Well, I think it's kind of, the Mercury conjunction with Jupiter is really going to highlight people's emotions right now, right, and their thinking. Like we've got it in the prior chart or the prior slide. Jupiter, whatever it touches, it inflates or expands. So it's going to inflate that Mercury and Cancer energy, and people are going to be more emotional. And then what seems to me is really dynamic about that is that square to Saturn, which is air, fire energy. So this is creating a steam effect here, to where um, the a lot of there could be this thing in the collective where people are more focused on themselves within the family because of Saturn and Aries. But I do feel this is going to bring some challenges in families and tribalism with this, and some dynamics with individuals' role within the collective family that we have here. That really jumped out to me, that square.
Right, being part of the family, but yet still being you, being an individual, because Aries is very much about the individual. And, with that Jupiter conjunct Mercury, um, the hot topic will be about families and children and women and a lot of the other things that we talked about. Jupiter and Cancer, our feelings, our emotions, all of that.
Hmm.
And then, what about the yod? What do you think of that yod?
Well, I like that. I think it's telling that it's the moon's involved, because we know the moon rules Cancer. So I think that, to me, that kind of informs as part of the story here, uh, being that the moon is involved, and then Pluto there. it just seems like to me that there's got to be something that's dynamically changes around our philosophy here, because the moon's in Sagittarius. So our philosophy and our thinking about our food and about our families, there has to be something that has to dynamically change because of Pluto there.
I would agree with that. It's asking us to make changes to resolve it, to settle whatever it is.
Right.
And then we have those trines with to Vesta and Juno. So Vesta is our home and hearth, our community, and Pallas Athena is, our strategy and our wisdom. How are we working with that? So it's like, talking about things, communicating about it. Don't try to sweep it under the rug. It's like bring it out to the open to share and, come up with new solutions and new ideas.
Right. And I might say, if people think that there's a little dynamic energy in the collective right now, people are acting a little crazy. I think it's actually that Jupiter squaring Saturn a little bit there in Neptune. I mean, there's really this dynamic of tension of emotions within the collective, and it's going to need some outlet here. Um, and so I definitely think this is a great time to ground our emotions. Oh gosh, we should ground our emotions and stay centered with this dynamic energy.
Right, because Saturn wants to constrict and Neptune wants to like have a new dream, a new vision. And Saturn's like, no, we have this rule and we don't want to change it.
Right.
So anything else you'd like to share?
Well, I think this, to that prior slide that you were talking about it, back to the last time Jupiter was in Cancer, 12 years ago, 2013, 2014. I think the thing we can do here is say this is really a great time to start something new. That dynamic of the Aries, which wants to initiate and start, and Jupiter, which needs something to nurture and to birth something. This is a great time to birth something, or as you had on that prior slide, germinate something and get something going right now. And then see how that plays out over the next 12 years as Jupiter goes through each of the signs.
Right, kind of like make a plan, make a dream, and be flexible to make adjustments and changes as you move along.
You know, I, I I agree, and I always think about, if we kind of walk through, if you birth something right now, which I think a lot of times we think Leo is the ultimate creative sign, but it's really Cancer, because Cancer births the what has to happen, right? It births it, and then Virgo comes along. So let's say you birth something right now, and then Virgo comes along next and says, okay, now we've got to improve it in some way, and then Leo comes along, and we got to now make it look prettier. We need to be more creative with it. And then Libra comes along, and we evaluate our relationship with our project or whatever we birth. We try to bring some sense of balance and harmony with it and relationship. And then Scorpio comes along and says, okay, there's something about this project that you have to let die, you have to let go of, right? And then Sagittarius comes along and says, okay, but we've let something go. Now we can expand and grow your project even more. And then Capricorn comes along and says, okay, you've expanded now. Let's build some more structure with this project in depth. And then Aquarius comes along and says, no, I need to kind of separate and idealize something bigger here with my project. And then Pisces comes along and allows us to dream bigger with our project. And then we start the whole process all over again. And we may start a new project, decide something that we birthed when the cycle first started. And then Taurus comes along and we feed it money, we feed it support and nurturing. And then Gemini comes along and we communicate about it and we publish it or we do something with it. And then we're back to Cancer again. So that's the way I kind of see this whole sequence of, if we started a project, it goes through all of these phases of the 12 zodiac signs.
Exactly. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the Sabian symbols. In 1925, spiritualist medium Elsie Wheeler channeled the Sabian symbols with the assistance of Mark Edmund Jones. And Mr. Jones was an astrologer, an occultist writer, scriptwriter, and actor. And he believed that Elsie Wheeler had tapped into the ancient mind matrix. Each saying is a symbolic phrase that makes up an image of each degree of the zodiac. So we're going to use the degree before and then the one of it and then the next one. So leading up to the now and what's next. And and I think they have 30 and I put 29. So I missed the Gemini 30. Do you know what it is offhand? I messed up.
Not right offhand, no.
Well, we'll just go with what we have because they're, all accidents. There must be a reason.
Yeah,
So
I missed that one. Sorry about that.
yeah, it's like it's hard to proofread my own stuff. But anyway, the first mockingbird of spring, it's about virtuosity. And then the Cancer one, do you want to read that one?
Sure, the Cancer 1 degree is on a ship. The sailors lower an old flag and raise a new one. And the keynote here is a radical change of allegiance exteriorized in a symbolic act, a point of no return. So basically, what we have is a reorientation of our energies, of our emotions.
And then Cancer 2, a man on a magic carpet hovers over a large area of land. And the keynote is the ability to expand one's consciousness by stabilizing one's point of view at a higher level. And the key phrase is elevation. So I always think of it as you're on a magic carpet, you're flying above it. So you rise above the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't get involved in what's taking place. Like if it's chaos or a war or whatever, it's like, how do I help in the situation? So
Right. Absolutely. I agree totally. And Liz, I know I think we were talking about this off air, but to me, that first degree kind of sets the tone for the whole zodiac sign. And I think, that first thing where it's about reorientation of one's emotions, right? Lowering it, going away with one emotion and raising a new one, sort of a reorientation. I think that's really what the Cancer energy is talking about generally overall, that Cancers are here to reorientate and have healthy emotions, right? Healthy emotional expression in life.
right, it's like looking at things from a new perspective and seeing how it all fits in. And like I always say, every day is a brand new day. Yesterday is gone and dead, and so today, every new day is a new day to start fresh.
Right.
Okay, and then Justin found us a quote, so I'll let him tell you the quote.
Says nurturing has the ability to transform people's lives, by John C. Maxwell. And why I love this quote is this kind of gives us a purpose or intention as we move forward with Jupiter in Cancer, is that our nurturing, our kindness, our love, our nurturing, our compassion can transform people's lives. And so if we can focus the next year and a half, well, it's really about a year, with Jupiter and Cancer on how we're expressing our love and our emotion and our nurturing for others, we can try to transform at least one person's life this year.
Well, and my advice would be patient with yourself, be patient with other people, because they could have something going on in their life that maybe they're not totally expressing it yet, and they probably need to talk about it or read something about it, journal. Um, so it's like really getting in touch with our emotions. It's a huge year for that. Anything else you'd like to say about Jupiter and Cancer this year?
No, that's a good start. I think maybe we should get halfway through this cycle. We should come back around and see what Jupiter's doing.
Oh, absolutely. That sounds like a great idea. So Justin and I both do consultations. We have newsletters and YouTube channels, so we appreciate you subscribing and liking and contacting us for a consultation. And Justin, I'll let you tell about your slide.
Yeah, I'm an archetypal and Jojish astrologer, and like Liz says, we both do consultations. And best way to get a hold of me is through my email. justin.elzie@gmail.com.
Right, and his YouTube channel is Astrological Yogi.
Yep.
And then Justin and I will both be on Talk Cosmos on June 15th, talking about the Cancer new moon, the karmic readjustment. We're part of the archetypal symbol team. And thank you, Justin, for joining me today. I want to thank all those that joined live, all those that come back and watch later. We really appreciate you. We wouldn't be here without our audience.
Try to make a difference in somebody's life this year with Jupiter and Cancer.
What an excellent idea. So we're going to say goodbye for now and see you next time.